How many times a day do you brush? Your teeth are immaculate, Dennis asked, using his tools to poke around in the man's mouth. Twice a day, the man mumbled, trying to speak but not disrupt Dennis's work. Twice a day? Good. Always excellent to see someone who abides by the rules of dental hygiene, Dennis remarked with a blank stare as he continued his dental procedures. The man thanked him for the operation, pressing his hand against his still numb cheek. It's the least I can do, Dennis muttered. Make sure you sign out. We'll call soon and check in with you. The man shot a thumbs up to Dennis as he stepped out of the procedure room. Last patient of the day. Is that really necessary? The dental assistant asked as she cleaned up their station. It's a pretty routine operation. I like to check in with our patients. It encourages repeat customers, and in the dental industry, repeat customers are as valuable as the teeth themselves. Dennis smiled. The nurse nodded sagely as she too stepped out of the room. Dennis sat quiet on his stool for a moment before leaving the room, peeling his purple gloves off. As he walked down the office's hallway, he watched his patient signing out. He smiled, glancing to the clock. 6:29, it read. I'm taking off, Gina, he announced as he walked up behind the receptionist. Sounds good, Dennis. Have a nice weekend, Gina responded as she filled out paperwork. Dennis walked to the sign-out sheet. He shot a glance to Gina to see her with her nose in the filing cabinet behind the front desk. He pulled a phone from his pocket and snapped a photo of the sign-out sheet. Kurt Mendez, 682-1214, the bottom of the sheet said. He hurried outside to his car, as his patient was getting into his. He was going to be late if he didn't hurry. Hi, Dennis said as he looked at his phone. Listen, I'm going to be a bit late tonight. I know it's scary to be there by yourself, but I'll be home soon. And I've got a present for you, too. His smile morphed into a grimace. Just a little longer. Dennis followed an orange car for a half hour, before finally watching it pull into the driveway. As Dennis pulled over to the other side of the street, parking behind 3 other vehicles. He hurriedly pulled out his phone, looking at the photo he'd taken. A man stepped out of the orange car Dennis had been tailing. 1214, Dennis whispered as he dialed. He looked across the street. The man stretched before suddenly looking down. He pulled his phone out of his pocket, holding it up to his ear. Dennis's phone connected. Kurt Mendez? Dennis asked. Oh, yeah. Who is this? Kurt replied. This is Dennis, just checking to make sure you're doing all right after the procedure, Dennis said, reaching down beside his seat. Kurt was quiet a moment. Yeah, I just pulled in my driveway. I'm good. Thanks for checking in. Okay. Dennis watched as another car pulled into the driveway behind the orange one. A woman got out, followed by 2 children and a teenager. Good to hear. Thank you, Dennis said, getting flustered. He was still and silent for a moment. Fuck! He screamed. He looked around for a moment, unsure of what to do, gripping the steering wheel tightly. He could feel sweat starting to bead on his forehead. Son of... he mumbled. He started his car and drove off, hoping to wait until nightfall. He pulled into a driveway and shut his car off. In what seemed like a haze of exhaustion and frustration, he opened his door, sliding out of the vehicle and shuffling towards the front door of the house. As he put his hand around the doorknob, he stopped. He slowly placed his head against the door and he pressed his other hand against the painted green wood. Why do you have to always make things so goddamn complicated? Dennis asked under his breath. He opened the door and stepped inside, slamming it behind him in a fit of anger. He clenched his fists tightly as he walked towards that basement door. He looked to the kitchen table, where his supplies sat. Duct tape, rope, pill bottles, anesthetic. He felt shame somewhere deep within himself. He felt no pleasure in the journey here, but everything he did was in service of something much greater. Greater than himself. He was going to create a lasting legacy. Dennis walked to the basement door. He stared into the grain of the chestnut wood, swirls and loops folding back it on themselves, not too dissimilar from life itself. He opened the door, and it swung into the wall with a shallow, clattering noise. He steadily walked down the stairs. He lingered on each step, almost hesitating as some part of himself contemplated turning back, but he kept going. With each step he came closer to his final legacy, what they'd remember him for. He didn't want to cause any pain, he reasoned. After all, there would be no life without pain. Pain was what made us all intrinsically human, that single thing that bound us all together, that transcended man-made boundaries. He pinched the dangling small chain, and with a gentle tug, the exposed bowl blinked awake. Motionless, it lay cold on the stainless steel just a few feet away. He struggled to find his words. I have to apologize. I know He looked down, almost ashamed. I promised that I would do it soon. He looked back up at it. I just need a bit longer. The one I found, he has a family. Those are too difficult, he said as he walked to it. He put his hands on the table. It was nearly complete. It just needed an arm, a foot, and just a few more pristine teeth, just to complete the set. Dennis's eyes shot to the car battery in the corner of the basement, and the jumper cables that sat still, attached to it. I promised that I would bring you into the world soon. I just need a little more time, he whispered, caressing its mangled face. You know, I like to think that Carol would have liked you, he said aloud. He leaned down, laying his torso across the creation. He wanted so badly to hear its heartbeat. But he would soon. The journey here had been long and full of pain, but it was soon reaching its conclusion. As he marinated in the silence, something caught him off guard. There was a stirring beneath him. What? He muttered as he stood back up. He watched as the creation on the table began to rustle. No! How is this happening? You aren't finished! I haven't even tried to bring you to life yet, he shouted frantically. The creature screamed as it came into being. It shrieked like a banshee, howling out its agonizing pain for all to hear. Dennis slammed back against the wall, covering his ears as it rose from its lying position, slowly getting off of the table and facing its creator. Blood and flesh dripped from its form with each step it took. It moaned and wailed as it felt a surge of human emotion imbued within by its creator. Dennis could barely focus through the blistering sound to see what it was doing. The creature approached him, hands outstretched, like a child expecting the embrace of a father. The sound was deafening, but Dennis lowered his hands in a confused state, watching the creature as it approached him. He too extended his arms, and the creature in him sank into a hug. It laid its mangled, piecemeal head against Dennis's chest, silencing the noise as it did so. The two stood in the quiet for a moment. Dennis was still unsure of how this had happened. I'm sorry, he mumbled as he wrapped his arms around the shredded, torn flesh of its torso. You'll soon come to find that pain is the most necessary part of human existence. The creature tilted its head back to look at Dennis. Its eyelids smacked together as if it wore a look of despair. In a fit of rage, the creature sank its flawless, white teeth into Dennis's neck, pushing him up against the wall. "No!" he screamed as he slid down the wall. His creation frantically ripped chunks of flesh from his neck as blood splattered across its horrifying face. He looked into the creature's eyes as it chewed up Dennis's flesh. He was slipping. He could barely cling on to life as he stared at the being, his legacy. He mustered what little strength he had left and formed a frail smile. "Make..." He leaned his head back against the wall as the creature continued to gnaw on the torn chunks of flesh. "Make me proud," Dennis muttered as he succumbed to his wound. The still fresh crimson oozed from gashes and marks across his neck, staining his white button-up shirt. The creature slowed its chewing to look at its creator, its father. With little movement, some other primal feeling within it began to stir, working itself to the surface, breaking the skin like a worm burrows through an apple. The creature began to sob. Had no eyes, no tear ducts to form a physical representation, but what it felt within itself, it was clear. It understood what its father told it. This is what the pain feels like.